It's time to start following and training and planning for the Olympics in 2026, and we have Luke Puto with the Canadian bobsled team with us today. Just fresh on the heels of a competition in Lake Placid, and you were in Utah as well, in Salt Lake City, I think it was. Let's talk a little bit about you and how you came to like the sport of bobsledding to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. So I started like most people. I played hockey all my life, but I kind of reached the point where my skill level fell off compared to the other players, but I wasn't quite done competing at stuff. I wanted to find something new to do, something different to do, and there's not a lot of sports you can get into at a later age. You're kind of limited. So I literally just did a Google search one day, looked for sports you could play in your 20s and 30s, and bobsleigh popped up, and everyone's seen it in the Olympics for the most part. You can remember the movie Cool Runnings, you can do all that kind of stuff, but you never really know what it takes to get into it. So I looked it up, went into the Bobsleigh Canada website, looked up all the standards you have to hit, and just started training for those standards. And then, had some help along the way and got lucky and ended up kind of being named to the team now.
So this just happened recently here in October, November?
Yeah, I was
22?
named to the team just here in the end of October, early November. So there's like about a 2-month long selection process. You go to Calgary, then you go to Whistler for some inter-team races, then you come back and you get a little break, then you go back and the season starts. So we did a race in Whistler, a race in Lake Placid, and a race in Park City.
And how does that get coordinated? There's obviously a level with that Olympic type of training that you do. You must follow a regimen, I would imagine.
Yeah. So for a while, I was kind of working by myself. Doesn't work. I've had some help with the national coaches. They put together some programming for you. The training, there's a lot of weights, a lot of sprinting during the summer, especially when you can't get on the ice. And then when we go to Calgary, we go to there's a push track inside there. So basically they've got this refrigerated, I don't know, I'd say it's probably 200 meters long, but it's a refrigerated, it looks like a roller coaster. It's like a monorail. You go up, you run across this flat, you go down, kind of takes you up, and then the momentum brings you back towards the bottom, and you jog the sled back up to the top. And that's how we get the training in as specific as possible when you can't get on the hill outside. So we have that access almost year round. They close it a couple months in the summer to do some maintenance, but you can get there probably 8 of the 12 months of the year. There's one of those in Calgary, and then if you're in the eastern side of the country, you can go to Lake Placid, just go down the border, and there's one of them there as well. But that's kind of where we spend most of the time in September getting ready for the season. We work with our pilots, we work with other teammates, we work on different combinations. It's where you get to play and experiment with stuff, and then when you get to the hill, you want to be able to bring your best, so that's where we kind of get all that stuff practiced, and then we try to bring our fastest stuff to the hill.
And do you do a particular role within that team? This is a two-man, we have pictures of the...
Yeah. So currently I'm one of the crew members, so in a 2-man team, you're known as the brakeman. So at the very end of the run, when you get past the finish line, you're the one that pulls the brakes, make sure you stop before you get to the end of the kind of a run out. It's this really steep piece at the end that goes straight uphill basically to try to slow you down, because as you get to the bottom, your speeds will get 130, 140 kilometers an hour. So you've got to stop before you get to the end. Normally there's like a snowbank or some rubber, something to kind of help you out.
Just stop there. You say 130 to 140 K?
Yeah, and the 2-mans you can get up to about 143, 144 kilometers an hour. Earlier this year we did a race in the 4-man bobsleigh, which is a little bit heavier. Everyone's pushing at the start, it's a little faster. We got to 153 kilometers an hour in Whistler.
Jeepers. I knew it was fast, but I guess when you consider you're sliding down a tube of ice, a lot can happen. Have you had any training? Do they do anything to prepare you for a turned over sled or something like that?
I actually had my first crash not too long ago.
Yeah.
And there's not really a lot you can kind of prepare for. What ends up happening is you flip over and you spend either the rest of the way down, either on the side of the sled or upside down. There's little handles inside the sled. You just kind of hold yourself there and duck your head up and hope your head doesn't hit the back of the ice. And it's not as bad as it might seem, because the sled slows down a lot when it goes off of its runners. So it slows down. The friction's really high. It's just quite loud and pretty bumpy. So you have a lot of time to think as you go down the hill. But yeah, it's not as bad as it kind of seems. It's just more of a more of a reminder that the sport can be dangerous no matter how fun it is.
At that speed, absolutely. So is there a skill that the pilot has to use in terms of trying not to go up and down and have that speed and trajectory?
Yeah, so basically the pilot will have this kind of mechanism where they've got two rings, just like basically a pulley system. And so they pull on the rings, and it'll move the front of the sled, moves the nose, and moves the runners a little bit. And so when it comes to steering, less is more in a lot of cases. If you try to oversteer, you'll lead into a skid, and when the skidding, just like a car skidding on ice, you have no control over where the sled's going. Mm-hmm. If you move it kind of subtly and a little bit cautiously, you have the ability to direct where it's going, and that's how you get on and off the corners. Because if you take some of the corners, if you look at some of the corners, we're taking them on the banking at on the side of the wall, and you come back down. All that's done through the steering, but like I said, less is more. The more you steer, the more friction you make, which can lead to skids, but also slows you down. The fastest way down is with your runners as straight as possible.
And are these skids, are they sharp like skates, or are they just like a snowmobile ski?
They'll be they're kind of like a skate if you took, but they're not sharp. They're shaped like a skate blade. Mm-hmm. But instead of sharpening them, we polish them to make them have as low a friction as possible. So usually what you do is you take sandpaper from 200 grit to about a micron grit, and you'll polish them for 2 or 3 hours at a time to try to get the minimal amount of friction possible. And any kind of scratches or burrs or anything like that inside the runner will slow you down on that track. So you want to get rid of those. And usually that's the part that takes longest. If you got scratches, like when we crashed, there was scratches down the one runner. It's a couple hours to polish it out, but it's worth it because you can gain probably 5 or 6 hundredths of a second without any extra effort aside from the polishing. And in the sport, I know the last podium we were on, the first and third was separated by like 3 hundredths of a second. So wow. you gotta do that kind of stuff to get that time.
Everything counts then in that level of competition.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned the movie Cool Runnings there was a Jamaican bobsled team. Are they still in existence, or
actually the future's looking pretty bright there. I just came back from Lake Placid. They had 2 teams there, and then a new young guy kind of learning the ropes. Actually, the Jamaican sled is here in Canada right now getting some repairs done. But yeah, they're still around. They're still competing at a high level, and it's really cool to see, especially like many people will be able to recognize them from that movie and kind of beyond. And yeah, they're still around. They're still fighting, and they're an honor to compete against them.
Do you study other competing bobsled teams from other countries? I would imagine there'd have to be some comparisons of what you're doing with, like they do in football. You look at the other teams play. Is there something you can do with other countries? I don't want to give away secrets, but
absolutely. From a lot of the time, you spend a lot of time watching. For me anyways, I look at a lot of what the other push athletes will do. In a lot of countries, they have a lot of very, very qualified athletes that are been around for quite a while. And they're in their early 30s, late 20s. They've been around the block. They've trained for a long time. They've always got little secrets that you can try to figure out along the way. From like a team or a pilot perspective, more so it's looking at what they do with their sled. So you'll try to get little peeks at their runners because different radiuses will affect the friction a little bit differently. You'll try to see whether they did something different to the bottom of the sled to make it a little bit faster, whether they waxed it, those little things. It's also like a lot about knowing the track. So you watch, as a pilot or even as a brakeman, to try to learn the track, you watch a lot of video, figuring out where the corners are, because you can make a difference. Even in the back of the sled, if you know where the sled is. And one of my teammates not long ago, they were close to flipping over, but my teammate knew where he was in the track and kind of jolted his momentum the other way, and it actually kept the sled from falling over and kind of put it back on its all fours, which helped them get down, and then they ended up podiuming him after that. So kind of saved the race with that. So just knowing where they were.
The quality of the ice that you're sliding on, is it like a curling type surface pebble, or is it fairly smooth?
So it kind of depends. Each track has a little bit of a different philosophy for how they want to do it. Whistler's all about speed. So Whistler's ice is very smooth. It's very thick, and they take care of it daily, hourly. There's someone spraying it all the time. When you go to some of the slower tracks, Lake Placid's a good example. Part of what they try to do is they try to make it as more technically challenging on the pilots opposed to just fast. So the ice there is a little bit more bumpy. It's kind of more like pond hockey ice, and just adds a new level of difficulty for the pilots. They've got to handle the bumps and then as well as the corners.
if you look at the next 4 years, what's involved with Luke's training? You must have to maintain weight, watch what you eat, where you go, and keep that level of competitiveness on the edge because other countries are doing the same thing. And 48 months from now, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so a lot of now that we've kind of finished this first big block of competition, we've got a little couple month break here. Get back to the gym, get back to the ice house, do some training, get ready, and then we have a kind of a final race here at the end of March that decides our circuit's championship. So we'll get through that. For us, we're a lot of new athletes, a lot of younger athletes at the start of this quad. So for us, it's kind of getting together as a team, getting that chemistry with one another. Timing's really important at the start, so us working together, getting that timing down on all of our starts is going to be important. And just naturally kind of getting more comfortable with the sport. I mean, I've had probably 30 or 40 runs down the bobsleigh track now. We're competing with people that have had hundreds and hundreds. So it's really just about accumulating those runs, getting more comfortable with the sled, and then starting to kind of next year and the year after really start pushing our numbers, getting those numbers down so that we can compete with the big boys.
If we wanted to watch you and your progress of the team for Canada, where would we go to find that? How would we follow you?
Yeah, so there's a couple different spots. All of the sliding information for the international circuits is on a website, ibsf.org. That's more of a broad, it covers all the different competitions, bobsleigh, skeleton, all the different circuits. It gives results, information, schedules, all that kind of stuff. More specifically, bobsleighcanadaskeleton.com is our website. From there, you can keep track of the development team, which is my group, as well as our kind of older guys that are on the World Cup stage, and the gals as well. They've done quite well so far. But yeah, basically, aside from that, there's not a lot of coverage. CBC does a good job of covering the World Cup events. Those are usually on Fridays and Saturdays. And for us, a lot of it comes through social media. The tracks all have their own streaming services set up. So if you want to watch some of our races, the individual tracks have their own kind of Instagrams, Facebooks, all that kind of stuff that have those streams going.
Luke, best of luck on track to the gold, and thank you for taking time today.
Thanks a lot, Randy.